Welcome back for our next season. This week we travel into a tome of anime, aether, and apocalyptic themes in Anima, Beyond Fantasy.
They were once here. They walked this earth as we do now. They breathed the same air, and yet, in the end, they stained the soil with their blood. We were much alike, but their essences were more tied to the supernatural than is ours. Like mere shadows, their civilizations sank into the darkness and disappeared. Their lifeless bodies covered the world, and all their works vanished as easily as tears in the rain. Mankind erased the last traces of their existence. We concealed our history by destroying that which was unlike us. Time passed, and those beings were converted to myth and legend. But unknown to us, before they vanished and were lost to memory, they left something behind. Much more than their legacy, more than their works. They left their souls, and thus were born the Nephilim.
Fast Yearly Podcast presents The Tome Travelers.
Well, hello, this is John, and welcome to Tome Travelers, our tabletop RPG retrospective podcast. And today I am joined by, of course,
Roxanne.
And
Sam.
Hi guys, welcome back. I know we've been doing a few episodes that have been interviews.
We've done a lot of interviews.
Like 4 episodes in a row, and
you've talked to more new people than I've talked to new people in my entire life in the last 2 weeks.
It has been very trying, I will be honest. Coordinating schedules all over the world is a pain in the neck.
Of course.
Especially people who
are relatively successful.
Well, relatively successful, but at the same time, tabletop RPGs is their business.
Yeah.
And so their business hours are like, they'll talk about business during business hours, so 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
But, of course, for me, tabletop gaming and podcasting is a hobby, and hobbies take place after that point a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so it's been fun. It's been
We just need to make it our business.
Yeah, true. I agree.
And then we wouldn't eat, but we could talk about it at the same time everybody else does.
Yeah, but of course, if there were people out there helping us with that, there is, of course, our e-store where people can buy our merchandise, or they can support us on Patreon, and then we could actually do this for a business.
So, if you're listening to this and you like what you hear, you can always support us on Patreon. But
yeah, and we, of course, have lots of swag on Patreon that goes out to our...
On TeePublic.
Yeah, on TeePublic, but we also have special things.
Do we have swag
Yeah,
on
we actually
Patreon?
Have swag that we offer on Patreon.
I haven't looked at our Patreon in a while.
So
we need to add Sam to our swag.
Yeah, Sam.
We need to get some... I know.
Would you like a Sam?
We can make a plush Sam doll.
There you go. Oh.
Don't let the clubs know about it. I will be all the rage.
That's right.
Oh, wait, that was. Oh, wait, I'm talking totally out of school. I'm sorry.
No. No, so we're a retrospective now. You used a new big word in
that's
our
what I'd
intro.
like to... Anytime I talk to people about the show, and I'm just like, this is what we do. I'm like, we're a retrospective. We talk about games in the past.
Do you say that? I have never heard you say that.
Yeah.
That's a much better word than what I say. I'm just like, we're a podcast that talks about games.
Today, we are definitely talking about an older game.
But it's still going.
Yes, it is.
Which is usually the case with some of our games.
Yeah, but this one's still going moniker is going to be a little bit different because it's still going, but not in the United States.
Oh.
This is an interesting property, and I'm really looking forward to it. The gentleman from Swordfall, that's a Kickstarter going right now, it turns out that Anima is like his number one game that he wants to play but cannot find a table of.
Ah.
And I understand that.
I'm glad to know that every other gamer in the world suffers from that same hang-up because I feel like we have so many games that we want to play that nobody else wants to play, and we're just kind of like sat here going, well, I'm glad we have this great game that we'll never get to play. But
that's why I like going to conventions, and I find the games that I can't get anyone else to run for me at the conventions.
We'll have to look for some games this year.
Yeah, like City of Mist and...
I want to play City of Mist.
And I'm sorry, I will always find a Ninja Crusade game because nobody runs it for me here.
That's
so,
true. That's
yeah.
true. I could run it for you, I guess.
But so today we are diving into the game Anima, Beyond Fantasy. And so, interesting property. This is a fantasy RPG that is similar in scope to, say, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. It has a lore, it has a world, but as far as the focus of this game, there is a lot more. I mean, everybody knows Dungeons and Dragons' whole alignment thing with evil, good, chaotic, lawful, whatever, all those different things. This game is much more stark in contrast, that there is actual, like, the world is divided into light and darkness, good and evil, and the forces are gathering on both sides.
So there's
of those
really
elements.
no neutral. You're just good or bad.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of whole neutral territory to this because it is a world in conflict where the world's going to be destroyed if you don't step in and do something.
So Republicans and Democrats. That's it. Republicans and Democrats.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how it feels right now, is that everything is starkly divided in our country.
Yeah.
So there's no middle ground, it feels like.
But so this is a world that is not about being an elf or a dwarf or anything else. This is about being pretty much human or some variant of a celestial being / human.
Oh.
So very different in its scope. But so this is a world by Carlos B. Garcia Aparicio, who is still very active in the Anima community and deeply involved in the creation of this game in any format. And we're definitely going to get into
There's
that by the
several
end of the
formats
show.
at
Oh, yeah. So let's kick this one off. So this was originally published in 2005 by Edge Entertainment in Spain. And then...
Oh, yeah, you said it was a Spanish book, and that threw me off, yeah.
Then in 2007, it was published by UBIK in France, which merged the next year with Edge Entertainment. French and Spanish, for about 2 years there, were publishing and controlling this game. And then in 2008, it was published by Fantasy Flight Games. And that was for United States and British markets.
Right. Do you have the Fantasy Flight book?
I do have it.
Okay, that's the one that you have.
Yeah, I have the Fantasy Flight.
And beyond.
Because honestly, Fantasy Flight is the only company that has ever published it in English. It's the only one that exists for us. Talking about events that usually happen, that's something we always do. We look at the events of the year of publishing.
In the world.
And we're going to look at 2005, because that was the original year of publishing in Spain.
Okay.
We have the Huygens probe lands on the moon Titan.
Oh.
So there was an actual probe that landed out there on Titan.
Nice.
That was a pretty cool little thing. Condoleezza Rice becomes the first African American to be Secretary of State. Now, a lot of people might be thinking, wasn't she also the first woman? But no, the first woman was Madeleine Albright.
I don't think anybody's forgotten about Madeleine Albright.
Some of our younger audience might not know.
I appreciate your optimism that we have a younger audience.
I hope we have a younger audience.
Okay.
But here's a cool one. So Canada introduced the Civil Marriage Act, which was the opportunity for anybody to get married.
Right.
Of course, within legal bounds of age and other things like that. But so this was one of the first, in this hemisphere, gay marriage laws where people could get married. Mm-hmm. And this created a whole thing of marriage tourism, where people would travel to Canada to get married. The idea and the hope was that you would go to Canada, get married, and it would be recognized in the United States because it was performed in another nation. And of
America does not. That is not how they operated.
Yeah, it didn't work well, but at the same time, the opportunity, an inexpensive opportunity to get married. Now, I know that there were a lot of people who could not do that. Not everybody can just get up and go to Canada.
Yeah.
There's always the questions of your visas and other things just to get into the country.
Canada is particular about who can even just visit. So.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, a lot of people don't think you can just hop borders. No, it's not that easy.
In fact, it was in 2005.
Oh, really?
For my 21st birthday, I was completely wrong. It was 2008. Dad and I tried to get into Canada, and Dad could not. I could. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, you can leave him here. And I'm like, I'm not going to leave him at the Border Patrol, this little building, while I go to Canada for a week. And they're like, well, Monday morning he can try to get a hold of his lawyer. And I was like, we're talking about a lawyer from 31 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not happening, Margaret. Just let it go. We're leaving. Give us our stuff back. And then we had to we literally, I know this has nothing to do with Anima.
Well,
but we drove up, got interrogated to get into Canada. Dad couldn't get in. We literally just drove around the entry point where, like, we drove in one little archway, went around the building where they interrogated us, and drove out a next archway. And we had to get interrogated again to leave because we were coming back into the United States because we blipped into Canada for 20 minutes while they ripped my dad. Stupid Canada. Actually, there probably are. It was probably North Dakotan people that live in North Dakota.
North Dakotas?
North Dakotians?
North Dakotans.
Yeah, North Dakotans. But it was probably American citizens ripping us the entire time. But they'd asked me if we'd brought in food. I said no, and then Dad was like, "Oh, I put beef jerky in the travel cooler," and I was like, "That's it, Dad. They're gonna cavity search us."
Yeah, those are events that we know about. But I figured it'd be fun to go ahead and toss in some events that happened in Spain in 2005. Spain is the first country to ratify the new constitution of the EU. But here's a fun thing, and this is something that didn't make the news here in the United States because obviously we don't share a border with them. But Spain legalized same-sex marriage passing and going into effect that year, 3 months after Canada. And so both those nations did that in 2005.
Yep.
So kind of a neat thing
There might have been other nations, but you just didn't look at them, right?
Didn't really look at them, no. I looked at 2005 specific. So,
yeah, but you didn't look at, like, other nations outside of
Well, I
Spain.
looked at major events of the world, and
those are the only two?
Those are the only two that I could find listed. So, obviously, we're talking about a RPG in Spain, which this has been an awesome experience for me. This year, for Tome Travelers, I really want to move beyond just our understandings of RPGs here in the U.S., which is kind of what we did our first season. This season, I really wanted to push beyond, and I wanted to know, okay, what else is out there? Spain really is a land of RPGs that we've never heard of.
Well, I mean, look at Japan. There are so many RPGs that we've never heard of in Japan. So, I mean, every country is a country full of RPGs we've never heard of. Or at least that's how I feel about it.
And it's definitely good to feel that way. But the thing is, I mean, I never realized that.
Yeah.
Because my introduction to RPGs in the world was pretty much very U.S.-centric. It's like Shadowrun came out in the U.S. Shadowrun went across the seas and went into Europe. And then all of a sudden, Shadowrun movies are being made in Germany. It's one of those things where if all you know is your local market, it's always you kind of judge it based off that.
Yeah.
And so I want to know what else was in Spain. Games that we never heard of. Here's a couple. So there's Aquelarre, which is a dark, seriously mature historical RPG from a group called Nocturnal Media. It was originally published in 1986 and republished in 2016. So it is set in our world alongside real events, and players play real-world races in a time of war, disease, and religion and oppression.
Religious oppression.
Yeah, religious oppression and theocracy, where demons, angels, and paganistic magic lurks just beyond the veil. This is actually kind of a Middle Ages RPG, and so set well before the Renaissance period. I thought it was a very interesting idea, and the way people talk about it online, it is seriously very dark. They really took to heart the idea of how horrible it would be to try and survive in that time period. You know, between just laws being very flexible to whoever the powerful were, disease.
What time period did you say it was? Prior to the Dark Ages?
Well, it would be Dark Ages to Middle Ages.
Okay.
And just, I thought that was very interesting. Because a lot of times we have a very romanticized idea of knights in shining armor and everything else. We don't really think about the disease, the famine, the wars, the oppression. I
mean, I think they like to talk about, like, the plague and stuff.
Yeah. They
just make jokes about it, I guess, more often than not.
But I thought it was a very interesting idea. So another game, now this one I think you will definitely like. This is called Valkyrie, but it is the Spanish spelling, Walkure, but pronounced Valkyrie. Mm-hmm. It is a spy noir game set at the end of World War II in space. So the way I like to think of it, when I really kind of took a look at it, it is Fallout with a noir twist, but in space. You know, in the Fallout games, there's at the very beginning of, like, say, the most recent Fallout, you are this
most recent before 76.
Yeah, before 76, before the MMO,
before everyone hated it.
Before everyone hated it. But before the MMO, at that very beginning, you're in that really quaint little neighborhood and all the cars with that retro kind of feel and everything else. Imagine that kind of feel and that ideology in space, where the music, the government ideas, communism being this thing that people were really afraid of, you know, it really falls in line with that. It really looks cool, and I really wish that would come out here, because I think that would be a lot of fun to play spies in space.
Wasn't there a spy movie in space?
Thunderball.
Was it Thunderball? I thought it was Moonraker.
Or Moonraker. Yes,
Yeah.
no, you're right, Moonraker.
It was a James Bond one.
James Bond.
Yeah, I knew that one was James Bond because I think that's the only Bond movie that I've actually ever seen the whole way through. We've talked about this.
No,
And
It's really not all that great.
No, it's a very bad one.
I know,
compared
and
to
I was
the
like,
others.
this is terrible. And in fact, I described it to a friend because I didn't know the name of it, and I was like, all I remember is there was this big like warehouse building, and across the top it said Moonraker, and they go, "You mean Moonraker?" And I was like, well, I don't know. I know the new James Bond titles. I don't remember any of the old ones. Goldfinger.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. No. I thought one of the Flint movies starts in space.
Probably.
Doesn't it? Our Man Flint, or maybe it is in like.
Yeah, there is in like Flint.
Who was that guy? Dang it.
James Coburn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh God, it is.
I saw it a long time ago, and I thought it was in like Flynn. I didn't realize there was actually a T behind it. So.
Yeah. No, I think, but it was like a
Does it
Bond spoof, right?
Yes, it was a spoof that wasn't entirely a spoof, but you can't think of it as anything but a
It's so
spoof.
hokey.
Yes. And of course there is
It's in like Flint, where he's taking on the cabal of women plotting
yes.
to rule the world or
through
whatever.
perfume, because that's not at all.
Well, my favorite movie is Strange Brew, and it's about a brewmeister who wants to take over the world through, his
Through beer.
special mind control brew.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
it is a comedy, and it intends to be one.
That was by SCTV people, right? The SCTV.
Yeah, it was
yeah.
Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas.
Yes.
The Great White North sketch with the Bob and Doug McKenzie. I love that movie so much. Strange Brew is definitely one of my favorites.
Moving on, though, we're talking about Edge Entertainment, though. They are what really launched Anima. Edge Entertainment is huge. They are, if you remember last season, we talked about Ulysses Spiel with The Dark Eye. This is pretty much very much on par with that. They're the major distributor for parts of games in Europe. They're also a translation house, much like Ulysses Spiel is. So titles that we know that they distribute, if going down the list.
Oh, yeah.
Stuffed Fables, Zombicide,
Okay, game.
Rising Sun,
I enjoy it.
Bloodborne,
Never played it.
Sheriff of Nottingham,
Heard it's good.
and Munchkin. So these are big tabletop board games. Now their RPG translations include Call of Cthulhu, Achtung Cthulhu, Cthulhu Tech, Fiasco, Dragon Age, Eclipse Phase, and even Dungeons & Dragons. And they translate that game into Spanish and French and do distribution in Southern Europe. Mm-hmm. That is huge.
Yeah.
So
That's a lot of titles.
yeah. And then, of course, there are the games that they themselves they're unreleased in the United States, but they themselves produce. And those are Biblia Steampunk, which, guess what it is?
It's a book about steampunk.
Yeah. Mas Ala del Muro, which is the Game of Thrones RPG. And Zombie Manuel Cazador, which is a zombie game, obviously.
Well, yeah, I picked up. The only one that I wouldn't have known what it was the Game of Thrones one.
Yeah.
I'm like, nothing about that strikes me as particularly Game of Thronesy. But
Yeah, but-
I don't know. Maybe it means every character you love dies. I'm gonna Google translate the name because I don't see anything like Ice and Fire in there.
No, I don't see that either. But so Fantasy Flight Games bought out the rights to Anima and brought it over. They released a slew of games. Now, the neat thing is, or not neat, but this is odd to point out. So they started a release of Anima First Edition, but it was never released because by the time they were getting ready to do it, Second Edition of Anima was coming out overseas, and so they went ahead and bought the rights, and what we know as Anima Beyond Fantasy in the United States is the Second Edition of the game. So I just want to definitely toss that out there.
It means beyond the wall. I think we talked about that before. Now that at first it was just like I guess I didn't type it in quite correctly. I don't know how it changed it, but it was like, are you sure you didn't mean this other? Because also it was more Ala del Muro, and I was like, okay.
But so Fantasy Flight Games over the course of several years released Anima Beyond Fantasy, the Game Master's Toolkit, Gaia Book Volume 1, Dominus Exit, Those Who Walk Amongst Us, Arcana Exit, Prometheum Exit, the Character Folder, Character Diary, the Core Exit, which was a 2nd edition basic rules, and another book called Gaia Volume 2. So a pretty good slew of books that came out for this, which I love when companies will support something. They really put a lot of weight into this.
I was trying to find out what exet meant, but I guess it's just a word that they created for this.
Well, and that was actually, as I'm talking about this was one of the problems with this game.
It made up words.
Well, no.
that he put on titles.
All those books are essentially names of things that we have in classic other fantasy RPGs, like Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, both follow a very simple outline of there's a player's handbook, there's a GM's guide, there are monster manuals. Those things are named in such a way that you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
You know, when you want the monster manual, you get the monster manual.
Yeah.
Or the bestiary or whatever.
And it's a manual of monsters.
Yeah. But with these books, a lot of times they would have these strange titles, and everybody was just like, well, what's in this book? I won't know until I pick it up or buy it.
Yeah.
And so that was, in my opinion, not the best idea.
I've actually heard similar complaints about the Star Wars RPG right now.
Oh.
The new one from Fantasy Flight. I actually had a guy I was talking to the other day, and his complaint was more that Fantasy Flight broke up so much into different volumes instead of just, so we have like the Edge of the Empire, Age of the Rebellion stuff, and so it's either time periods or location based, and then you have Force and Destiny, which obviously deals with Force characters.
Yeah.
But the fact that they split up classes and characters across four or five thick $50 books really, really kind of frustrated. And it's like, okay, Edge of the Empire. What's in there?
Scoundrels and the Underground.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know that from the title unless you looked at it. So it might be a thing that Fantasy Flight does kind of on purpose. So,
well, it's one of those things when you try to differentiate what you're doing so much from what people expect. Are you really helping yourself?
Yeah.
It would be an interesting argument to have. So, but talking about the game with the visual style, the game combined anime and Western fantasy tropes. And it's probably the most fan-servicey style mainstream fantasy RPG I could ever imagine. Mm-hmm. We have tons of unrealistic armor, cleavage windows abound.
Well, of course.
Because it's anime-based, and old-school anime at that. I kind of look at it and I was like, this is one of those things where I had to judge this piece of gaming. Am I looking at it as an American who has a very I have my own idea of what art is in games, especially right now. Pathfinder made some major strides to step away from the tropes.
Yeah.
But looking at it from a European standpoint, with especially Victorian or post-Victorian or Renaissance art, post-Renaissance art, a lot of it are nudes. A lot of it is different ideas of beauty. And at the same time, combining that with anime, is that what the author was going for? Or the people who are in charge of the art? I don't know.
The issue I take with that is that, I don't know, when you look at Renaissance-style art, there's a certain body type that is mostly portrayed, even amongst women. They're usually a little bigger than your average anime character. True. I have never seen, and this is in my limited experience, I'm sure, but because it's probably out there and I just don't know about it, but I have never seen an attractive, overweight anime character. I think it's just cleavage windows and unrealistic armor because that's what people like.
True.
It sells books.
It sells books, and it's one of those things where...
And not people in general, but there are a group of people who will buy RPG books that want to buy it for the boob windows.
100%. No doubt, no question in anybody's mind. I'm just going to toss this out. Look at the miniature market, like painting minis, and the highest selling minis that sell, like as far as volume or anything else, outside of wargaming minis, are going to be the opportunity to paint women.
Really?
Yeah.
I find that those would be the most difficult minis to paint. Really?
Actually, I would think it would be pretty easy to paint. Just douse it in
just
flesh
nude?
color.
just flesh tone.
Yeah.
I guess
you go look at Kickstarter and you look at the number of Kickstarters that come out that are mini campaigns.
It's all scantily clad women. My thing is it's like, what is it doing for you, fella? I
share your outrage.
It's the closest they can get sometimes.
Ow.
She is less than an A cup. I mean, she's a negative. She's a micro cup.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it doing for you, buddy? If that's your sole reason for purchasing it, what are you doing?
Hills are easier to traverse than mountains.
I know. Well, maybe it makes them feel more endowed. Look.
Okay, we're going
I'm just
far.
Saying.
We've just lost 2 people, I think, on our membership.
We've that's right.
So, but system mechanic wise, with this game, we had mentioned before ICE, Sam, in the show, talking about good old ICE and the games that they created. Well, this Anima is actually based on Rollmaster.
Oh, okay.
And so the system that is Rollmaster is the basis for this game, and its magic system used the same kind of points system to cast, and the way the game lays out for the character sheets reminds me a lot of The Dark Eye, which is also out of that whole era of gaming with ICE. Mm-hmm. Things that they improved on. The myriad weapon rule, all these various weapons and whatnot for Rollmaster is gone, and combat is much faster and deadlier. So we aren't really dwelling on the kind of weapons that are in the game. Damage is damage for this system. And it doesn't matter if you're wielding a halberd or a katana, which I kind of appreciate because this kills the whole fanboy katanas are better than everything kind of trope that was around for a while. It's like, for a while there in the fantasy realms of RPGs, is like, you have a katana, that katana is better than a longsword. Thankfully, by introducing this rule where it's just, you have a weapon. Your weapon does damage. Congratulations. It really killed that off, and I'm very happy with that. The other thing that this game did, that this kind of makes me laugh. This is a game that has, I'm cursed with awesome. This is a game where there are characters who are on the side of evil, and they're cursed characters, and they're brooding, they're dark, and they're emo, or whatever.
Right.
But it's awesome. The idea of being cursed and being evil and everything else just means you're more powerful.
It reminds me of, like, in Vampire the Masquerade, there was the Fangs with a Z and Cool Powers with a Z.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, I'm a creature of the night. Things are so, so terrible, but I can devour whole things. It's souls and make people run off cliffs and stuff. It's like, it's not that bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a really odd game because all these developments that are both good and bad, it's an old school game. It's using an old school system, but it's introducing new things in a way, even when you think about it. So old school anime. The whole boob windows and cleavage and everything else, an old school RPG system. All these things kind of harken back to an 80s and 90s kind of feel.
Well, I assume that's who he was. Well,
yeah, and that's the thing.
We say that. We don't know what anime is like in Spain. That may be 80s and 90s. It was 80s and 90s there, too, because they were still released at the same time. But maybe prominent Spanish anime was still doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
we have no idea what anime looks like in other countries.
Very true. The thing I'm saying is, getting towards is, so all this old school feel to the new school, it's really interesting to see, who was the audience that they were aiming at, is what I was kind of getting at.
The guys they thought would play it.
Yeah.
I don't know, that wouldn't attract me.
Yeah.
Particular to it, but I'm sure there are many. I don't know. It's one of those things when it comes to RPGs. Mm-hmm. Why do boob windows and stuff anyway? It's theater of the mind. It's not necessarily, you're not going to have colored graphics or videos or anything consistently for your character. You can decide she has a boob window and doesn't wear realistic armor and is flashing skin all the time. It's like it was trying to reach out to a different demographic than what would normally be looking at picking up an RPG.
And that's what I feel as well. what happened to this game? So, I mean, moving on, we don't see it here anymore. We don't see it in the United States anymore. Now, you and I have gotten into the card game.
Well, we played it once.
Yeah.
It was fun, though. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a great game.
Yeah, Fantasy Flight put out... essentially, it's a card game. It's just a very simple one. It's not a collectible card game.
No, it's not a trading card game.
Yeah.
It's single box. We have two. We've never played the second one. I assume it's just different locations or different thematic elements.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a really well-designed game.
Yeah.
But Fantasy Flight essentially ceased production in 2015 of all these things. They're the board games and also the RPG books.
Yeah.
Now, in Spain, Anima Beyond Fantasy is still being played, has a very active community online, including a fan community on multiple YouTube channels that call themselves Anima Throughout the Network. They a very simple name, but hey, it gets the point across. And several of these series, there are several series of broadcasted actual plays, such as one that's called Anima Exet, and these are all in Spanish.
Yeah.
And so the fan community there is very much thriving and going very well. My understanding is they aren't publishing the book physically anymore. It's all PDF. But they are still available for sale. Now, there was a petition started in 2018 asking Edge Entertainment to offer the books back in print because you have a whole new generation of fans who would love to get a physical copy of the book.
Right.
Now, at the same time, there was a miniature skirmish game that was produced by a group called Cypher Studios in 2009. And annual competitions of this skirmish game were held yearly up until 2016. This coincides, of course, with the time period that Fantasy Flight discontinued its contract. It was like the miniature game continued for about a year after Fantasy Flight let it go. Sure. And then I guess international interest waned. This was an actual international tournament. People would play through tiers, where it would be you play within a tier within your city, to state, to national, and then international competition.
Right.
So that's actually really kind of cool, but it all shut down right around that time.
Yeah.
Kind of sad on that note, but as far as this property goes, it does continue. There was a video game that was produced on the Wii called Anima Arc of Sinners, and there was a game recently released on Wii and a few other platforms called, or not Wii, it's on, what's the new one for? Switch. It's on the Nintendo Switch, and it's called Anima Gate of Memories, and I'm actually interested in that one. I actually think it looks fairly good, and honestly, the Switch needs some more games.
Yeah.
And of course, there was the card game, which I do recommend. There's the base game, Shadow of Omega Revised, Beyond Good and Evil, and Twilight of the Gods.
Yeah, we have Shadow of Omega and the Twilight of the Gods.
And I really enjoy those games. I cannot stress that enough.
Yeah, they were really good. I will say Fantasy Flight, they're no chumps when it comes to card games. They make good games. We're currently into a Fantasy Flight card game.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's an interesting one that I want to throw out because it actually came in, for me, it came in yesterday, and that is that there was a book released called Luminous Echo. It teamed a Canadian fan of the original RPG for Anima and the original artists from Anima for 2 new world books that are compatible both with Anima, Pathfinder, and 5th edition D&D. It is a campaign setting book. Looking through it, it is stories and discussion of the world in general for about 90% of the book, and then the last portion of the book are stats.
Okay.
So it's really just a world book that expands on whatever system you want to use.
Okay.
But I really like it, and of course the art is amazing. The artist is, I believe he is Chinese. His name is Wen Yu Li, also known internationally as Wen M. And his art is breathtakingly beautiful. And he did all the art for this book. Now, I will also toss this out because you did mention women of other sizes and endowments, and that does actually exist in this book.
Okay.
There are, in my opinion, very attractive women who are...
Sizes and endowment.
Yes, well, because I hate to say it, the women in Anima are horribly endowed.
Oh, yeah, like I said, that gypsy woman, she's very cold. On every image, she's in every image that she's portrayed. So
I wouldn't say horribly endowed so much as overly
endowed. That's probably correct because it's not horrible. It's just
I think that they wouldn't be able to stand up normally. Were this not a fictional thing?
Like I say, I grew up with a girl, and she started to get real thick around the middle, but she was also very chesty, and her dad just told her, "Girl, that's how the women in this family are. You've got to have something to support the top."
Yeah.
Or you're going to fall over.
Well,
Wow.
well, the women in Anima are doomed
not
to falling over.
the women in anime generally. Well, and even some, it's just like very tight. It's like their spines have to be titanium. I mean, it's just not how anatomy and physics work.
Yeah,
Gents. I mean, I know that is a popular look, but whew,
yeah.
they've got back braces on under that lack of armor.
But yeah, so Luminous Echo just released out to the Kickstarter backers. I backed it because I hoped that it would be something that would kick off a desire for Anima again here in the United States. We'll see. I doubt it, but you never know. I think it's kind of cool that the gentleman from Swordfall, who's doing his Kickstarter right now, mentioned that was a game that he was interested in. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Luminous Echo?
Luminous Echo. Oh, well, Anima.
You said Anima.
Anima.
Yeah.
Luminous
That's
Echo
cool.
is kind of this newest iteration.
It's a good-looking book.
Yeah.
So, it'd be cool if it... And, we don't know, I guess, what happened with the petition to Edge Entertainment to release the books, or they just dismissed it out of hand.
It's hard to say. I don't know. I know that...
I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world to just decide to republish something.
Yeah.
Especially if the license has changed hands and stuff. So
yeah, well, and the thing is that Carlos is still very much involved in the property. He's one of the people involved in the direction of the video games. He's actually, I had the opportunity to talk to him. I wrote the company specifically, and he responded when I wrote them. And it's just one of those things that trying to coordinate schedules between here and Spain is not exactly an easy feat.
There's got to be. Is that a 6-hour time difference, or is it more close to like 8?
I think it was closer to 8. But the fact that he responded and was the one that responded directly to the company email, I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And it makes me happy to see a creator who, over the course of 20 years, has managed to stay on top of his property and watch it go from being a tabletop RPG to being a RPG on a video game. So, you know,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's cool,
That's
and
really
congratulations to him. Of course, as I always end these shows, I have to ask, would you ever want to play this game? And so, Roxy, starting with you, what do you think?
I mean, I'm open to playing just about anything. I would need to look at it a little bit more to see if it was the whole angels, demons, full-scale, almost celestial war type stuff, and then humans are just kind of caught in the middle or kind of being used as tools or whatever, which is kind of what it sounds like to me, or that's how games like that tend to feel, is that it's a war between these OP creatures, and we're just kind of either used for them because we follow one sect or the other. I don't super care for games like that. I much prefer more ground level, I guess, stuff. I mean, creatures and stuff like that is cool every so often, but to have that be kind of the primary theme of the world or the setting kind of seems like a bummer. Or at least not for long term. Yeah. Like a one-shot or something, sure. Or a short, like, four-session campaign, sure.
So, Sam, how about you?
I do agree that the what you said, Roxanne, the angels v demons with humans in the middle, it is kind of a trope that's dragged out every once in a while. But I would actually like it for the kind of the morality play kind of game. You kind of sort of got that with Vampire the Masquerade when it wasn't the fangs and cool powers set. It's kind of like, what is evil, what is good, what can you do to justify, etc., and play on types. Unfortunately, once again, though, that trope is kind of a trope because it's very narrow. There isn't a whole lot more you can do other than, go kill this demon/angel, help these people, aid this demon/angel, whatever. I mean, it's kind of, MMORPG kind of direction.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I agree entirely. But
it would be, like she said, it would be interesting to play, like maybe a one shot or just kind of a limited series and just enjoy it and see what happens.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know. It feels like there's sometimes way too much religious oppression or religion in games.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone who's been religious most of my life. I want to play a game where I don't have to think about that. And so I see what they're doing there.
I think it's very safe for us to say that Western cultures, religion over the last 2,000 years has had a huge part to play in government, culture, and society, without a doubt.
Sure.
And so I think it's a fair assumption to say that that's going to be an influence within Spain.
Right. I feel like, I guess what I was going to say is that I feel like maybe people that are more religiously minded like to impose these huge wars between good and evil. I don't know.
I myself, with this property, I would definitely be willing to play it. I'd be willing to run it, which is saying something. I think that...
Because you don't run anything. Well, you run everything.
There are properties out there that I will straight up say I don't feel comfortable.
Play.
Yeah, I'd rather play, or I just don't feel comfortable running it.
Right.
But as far as this game goes, and, the entire concept, I'm always curious with fantasy. I think it is interesting to have a world where we aren't stuck with the elf, dwarf, whatever it is, kind of, look for the races. There aren't really classes in this game. That really kind of speaks to me a little bit. It's like, okay, here's something different. And as far as like the plot line goes of having an overarching bad guy or anything else like that, I kind of appreciate that, because games that are too kitchen sink for me, like it's just too open-ended, are often very hard for me to get started when I want to run or do something with that world. It's like a Ninja Crusade. I like that I have this plot line that is overarching, going beyond and behind the scenes that I can use. And so I like that about Anima. D&D and Pathfinder are very much sandbox games. It really comes down to what is a plot line based upon nations within those that really creates anything. And even D&D, like the Hoarded Dragon Queen, that was very much a evil deity is on the rise to do whatever.
Right.
So I kind of feel like I like that, and it'd be interesting to play. So that's my take on it. But yeah, so I kind of a neat thing to start back up with. And we are going to have some shows coming up. I hope you all enjoyed the little teaser at the end of the last show that I did. I actually put a little teaser for this one at the end of Jinkies.
Oh.
We did an interview with a gentleman who is making a game that is essentially a role-playing game based on Hanna-Barbera cartoons, the old Jabberjaw and Scooby-Doo gangs.
Yeah, I mean,
I was kind of wondering from the title. I'm like, that sounds like a Hanna-Barbera thing.
I mean, it's not directly. It doesn't have Hanna-Barbera characters in it, but it's based on those.
It's based
mystery shows.
It's based on that, and it's tropes from those things, and it's a cooperative storytelling game. But I had a great time talking with him about that, and then at the end, I did a little teaser, a little stinger for what would be coming up, which, of course, is this game here.
This game.
So, y'all haven't had to deal with any of this while I've been doing all these crazy interviews. I'd love to have you sit in on any of them.
Yeah. Oh, you offer it to her, but not me?
Would you like to sit on her?
No.
Well, actually,
I just wanted to give them the choice.
I think you misspoke, John. You said, "Would you like to sit on one of them?"
Well, you might.
I totally missed that. Oh man.
Well, we're going to have some really good ones coming up. Like, so in about 2 episodes after this one, I'm just going to go ahead and toss this out. We're actually going to do Spycraft.
Yep.
Yay.
And we have an interview with the creator of Spycraft.
Yep.
And his name's Patrick Capera, and he was awesome. And we actually have interviews that we're going to be doing, which I would love to have you sit in on. One of them you don't have a choice. It's going to be in the episode. We're actually going to talk about Nyambe, the African Adventures, and we're going to have a gentleman joining us for that. And we are also going to have, if all goes well, we're going to have the opportunity to talk to Jonathan Tweet, who is the head of Atlas Gaming. And Games. His name. Like, this is how big this guy is in the role-playing community.
John was kind of geeking out when he came up to the store the other day. He started pulling books off the RPG shelf, older D&D books, and was like, look.
Yeah, Jonathan Tweet, if you have ever played a game with the OGL, any of those books, any of those games, his name is on it. Because he is one of the creators, one of the 3 creators of the OGL. He is side by side in the player's handbook for Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition. He is side by side with Monty Cook.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean he's a pretty big deal. So we're going to hopefully have him on the show if everything works out.
Awesome.
So, guys, I really hope that you're as excited as we are for this season of Tome Traveler.
I've been pushing the Patrick Capera thing because I've made a couple new friends at the shop that saw some pictures once they became my friends on Facebook. They saw the Mistborn game pictures, and they were like, wait a second, there's a Mistborn game?
Yes,
there's
there
any
is.
because we have two. We have the RPG and a board game, and they had no idea that those existed. And I was like, well, and we posted those pictures because John got to interview the creator behind a couple of those. So they're really excited.
Yeah. None of this would be possible, I do want to toss this out, without our friends over at Pardon Us Gaming, who created the Everyverse RPG. We interviewed them last season, and they have been so gracious, sending us all the people, introducing us to all these gamers and all these writers. So thank you so much.
Yeah, ever since she got into the IGDN, she's hooked us up. So it's Deborah, and she's having a great time. I don't know if she's at C2E2 or if she just had a picture.
No, she has her stuff at their booth there for the IGDN.
Yeah, no, it's like center of the booth.
Yeah.
It has a big Everyverse RPG banner, and the books are right below. In fact, if in that picture that she shared, Part-Time Gods is featured in it. Capers has a banner in it. Masks, A New Beginning has books there.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of books that are either companies we've talked to or properties we've talked about or games we've played within the last year. So it was really cool to see that her book has finally made it
to a whole new level.
To a whole new level.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and call it off here. And please be sure to check us out. This season is going to be epic.
No. Wow.
Podcast presents The Tome Travelers.